It all started about 3 weeks after I ended things with Leah. To say she took the breakup badly is putting it mildly. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but things went sour the last few months. She became possessive. Every time I tried to go out with friends, she'd insist on tagging along, even if it was just a guy's night. She'd go through my phone, accuse me of cheating, and question every late-night text. Her paranoia went from annoying to suffocating, and I knew I had to end it for my own sanity. The night I broke up with her, she didn't react with anger like I expected. Instead, she just stared at me, a strange look in her eyes that sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't sadness or anger. It was more like determination. "You'll regret this," she whispered. Her voice was soft, barely audible, and it lingered in my mind even after she left. But I brushed it off, thinking it was just another manipulation tactic. She'd been so intense, but I thought that once we were done, she'd eventually move on. Maybe she'd find someone new and focus on that instead of me. It would be over. It didn't take long for her presence to make itself known, though. First, it was small things. My phone would ring at odd hours, and there'd be silence on the other end. I ignored it, thinking it was probably a wrong number. Then, I'd see her out of the corner of my eye while I was driving, just standing on the sidewalk, watching. The first time I caught a glimpse, I did a double take, but when I looked back, she was gone. I convinced myself it was just my imagination, maybe my guilt playing tricks on me. But it didn't stop. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard scratching at my window. It was faint at first, like a branch brushing against the glass. But it continued, becoming more deliberate and rhythmic. I got up, half asleep, and peeked out. No one was there. I checked the nearby trees, thinking maybe one of the branches was the culprit, but there was nothing close enough to reach my window. I shut the blinds and went back to bed, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. A few days later, I noticed my belongings being slightly out of place. My toothbrush moved an inch, the remote on the opposite side of the couch, a half-full water bottle in my fridge that I didn't remember drinking from. I live alone, so it wasn't like anyone else would be moving my stuff. I kept trying to convince myself I was just being paranoid, but it started happening every day. The changes were subtle, but noticeable, like someone was trying to leave just enough of a mark to let me know they'd been there. And then came the messages. At first, it was on social media. Leah had been blocked on all my accounts after the breakup, so I was surprised to see a new account following me on Instagram, a profile with no picture, no bio, just a single letter for the name. I thought maybe it was spam, but then I received a DM. Asterisk, you're still mine. Asterisk. I felt my stomach tighten, and I tried to ignore it. I blocked the account, but the messages kept coming. New profiles with no picture and no bio, each sending a message along the same lines. Asterisk, you won't escape. Asterisk, it was almost laughable, the cliched wording, like some horror movie. But the part that unsettled me was the knowledge that she was going through the trouble of making new profiles, of trying to get into my life by any means possible. The tipping point came when I found a letter in my mailbox, hand-addressed in her handwriting. My fingers shook as I opened it. It was just one line. Asterisk, if I can't have you, no one will. Asterisk. I stood on my front porch, staring at the letter, feeling the weight of the words press down on me. My skin crawled, and the realization hit me that this was more than just a bitter ex with hurt feelings. Leah was watching me, and not just in the ways I could casually dismiss. She was here, close, somehow knowing my every move. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck rise, as if she was there right behind me. I turned and scanned the street, half expecting to see her lurking in the shadows or hiding behind a parked car. But everything looked as it always did. Quiet, still, unremarkable. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. Rationally, I knew the best course of action would be to go to the police. But I could already imagine how that would go. Some officer giving me a skeptical look, telling me it was a civil matter. I could almost hear their voice saying, "Sorry, but we can't really do much if she hasn't threatened you directly." The problem was she had, but in ways that left just enough doubt. After another tense night, I decided to install security cameras around my house. I set them up near my front door, on the porch and facing the backyard. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest friends. Part of me felt paranoid, but another part, the one that had been growing more and more anxious, felt like this was a necessary step. Leah was becoming more erratic, and I needed proof, something tangible that I could bring to the authorities. The first few nights, the footage was blank. No signs of Leah, no disturbances, just the quiet, dark street and the occasional headlights from passing cars. I felt a sliver of relief creeping in. Maybe she'd finally gotten the message. Maybe she'd moved on. Then, on the fourth night, I saw something that made my stomach twist. I was reviewing the footage from the previous night, mostly out of habit, when I noticed something strange in the early morning hours around 3 a.m. The camera facing the backyard picked up a faint movement near the bushes. At first, I thought it was an animal, a stray cat or raccoon. But then, in the dim glow of a nearby street lamp, I saw her, Leah. She was standing perfectly still, her face partially obscured by the shadows, but her stance unmistakable. She just stood there, looking at my house, not moving, not making a sound. For an hour, she didn't budge. She just watched. I sat there, replaying the footage over and over, my pulse racing with each pass. The way she stood there, completely still, was more unsettling than if she'd been banging on my windows. This was a silent message, a declaration. She knew I'd see her eventually, and she wanted me to know that nothing was stopping her from being as close as she wanted. The next night, she was back, but this time closer. I watched the footage in the early hours of the morning, barely able to keep my eyes open but too afraid to go to sleep. Just before dawn, she appeared again, stepping out from behind a tree near the fence line, inching closer to the house. I could see her face more clearly this time, her eyes unblinking, focused on my bedroom window. The cameras captured the faint glow of her phone in her hand as if she were checking something, then glancing back up. The notifications on my phone began shortly after. First, a message. Asterisk, did you sleep well? Asterisk. Then another. Asterisk, I saw the cameras. They won't stop me. Asterisk. The messages continued throughout the night, sporadic and unnervingly specific. She knew where I was, knew when I was in bed, and knew I was too afraid to confront her. I thought about calling the police, but a part of me was still too proud to admit that I'd let her get to me like this. I kept thinking she'd tire herself out eventually, that this was some twisted attempt to get my attention, and that once she realized I wouldn't play along, she'd finally let go. But it wasn't long before I realized she had no intention of stopping. Every morning, I'd wake up to new messages, some that were eerily direct and others cryptic. One night, she messaged, asterisk, I loved when you used to make me breakfast. Asterisk another morning, I found a note tucked under my car's windshield wiper. Asterisk, I remember you liked coffee black. Asterisk, it was chilling. How much she remembered. how she wielded these details as weapons, reminders of our history, twisted and warped by her obsession. Then, things escalated in a way I didn't anticipate. I came home one evening to find the back door unlocked. I was certain I had locked it before leaving that morning. My heart raced as I slowly pushed it open, half expecting to find Leah waiting on the other side, smiling that calm, eerie smile. The house was empty, or at least it seemed that way. But as I moved through each room, checking every corner, my dread only grew. It was when I entered the kitchen that I saw it. There, on the counter, was a cup of black coffee. I froze, staring at the cup on the counter. The coffee was still steaming, the faint tendrils of heat rising in the quiet, darkened kitchen. My breath caught, and I forced myself to stay calm. My first thought was that someone else had been in my house. But the deeper, more unsettling realization was that this had to be Leah. She knew every detail, every vulnerability. I backed out of the kitchen, my mind racing with options. I could call the police, tell them someone had broken into my home. But what could I say beyond that? There was no forced entry, no visible damage. Just a cup of coffee, such an innocent object, yet terrifying in its implication. I needed proof, something solid, something I could show them to convey the depth of Leah's fixation. After a long night of anxiety and pacing, I decided to amp up the security. I installed an additional lock on my door and put a second camera in the hallway facing the kitchen. I couldn't live like this, constantly wondering if she'd snuck in again, if she'd left another unnerving reminder of her presence. That night, I slept in fits, constantly checking the camera feed on my phone every hour. The kitchen remained empty, and I forced myself to calm down, telling myself that maybe the locks had finally deterred her. The peace didn't last. The next day, I went about my routine, trying to push Leah's presence to the back of my mind. But when I returned home, I found another message waiting on my phone. Asterisk, you can try to keep me out, but you know I'll always find a way. Asterisk, my stomach dropped. This was more than obsession, it was a declaration of war. She wanted control, and every small act was a demonstration of her resolve, her willingness to push boundaries. That night, I pored over the camera footage. Hours of dull silence, the occasional flicker from a passing car's headlights, and then her. Right around 2:30 a.m., the camera facing the kitchen hallway captured movement. I saw her standing at the window, her silhouette framed in the dim glow of the street lamp outside. I felt a jolt of terror shoot through me as I watched her press her hand against the glass, her fingers splayed, almost lovingly tracing the outline of the frame. Then, as if sensing the camera, she lifted her head and stared directly into the lens. Her face was calm, almost serene. She knew I was watching, that I'd be seeing this later. The smirk that spread across her lips sent a chill down my spine. She mouthed something, words I couldn't quite make out, but it looked disturbingly like asterisk, you'll let me in, asterisk. I replayed the footage, searching for anything, any detail that could give me more insight into her state of mind. But each time I came back to that same look, that unbreakable stare that seemed to penetrate through the screen. It was like she was in control not just of herself but of me too. This wasn't just a fixation, it was a calculated game. She knew exactly how to chip away at my sanity, leaving just enough doubt to keep me from going to the police. In the days that followed, her appearances became bolder. I'd see her standing across the street, watching me as I left for work, or I'd catch glimpses of her in crowded places, just close enough for me to notice but far enough to blend into the background. It was a haunting presence, like she was everywhere and nowhere at once. Then came the messages on my work email. It was a Friday morning, and I was going through the usual onslaught of emails when I noticed one with no subject line from an unfamiliar address. The body of the email was short, just 2 words. Asterisk, miss me? Asterisk, I felt the familiar tightening in my chest. But this was different. She'd crossed into my professional life now, tainting the one space I thought was safe from her reach. I didn't respond, but the emails kept coming, each more invasive than the last. Asterisk, I see you're wearing blue today. Asterisk, or asterisk, lunch alone again? Asterisk, somehow, she was close enough to observe every detail, yet always remained out of sight, a ghost haunting my every move. My coworkers began to notice my tension, asking if I was all right, but I deflected, brushing off their concerns. What could I say? That my ex had become a shadow, lurking in every corner of my life? It was only a matter of time before Leah took it a step further. One evening, I returned home to find the front door unlocked again. This time, my heart was hammering so hard I could barely breathe. I took a deep breath, grabbed a heavy flashlight, and stepped inside, scanning every corner as I made my way through each room. It wasn't until I reached my bedroom that I saw it. There, on the bed, was a framed photo of the 2 of us from years ago, smiling and carefree. But there was something horribly wrong. Her face had been scratched out, deep gouges marking the glass, turning her features into a disfigured mess. The frame was cracked, and scrawled across the bottom in what looked like red lipstick was a single word. Asterisk, forever. Asterisk. I backed out of the room, my pulse racing, bile rising in my throat. This was no longer just about her presence. It was a threat. She was telling me she wouldn't stop until she'd made herself an inescapable part of my life, one way or another. That night I barely slept. I could feel her, like a presence lurking just beyond the walls, waiting for the perfect moment to strike again. She wanted control, and she'd gotten it. I couldn't take it anymore. Every message, every unexpected appearance, every unnerving reminder had chipped away at me until I was a shell of my former self. Leah had consumed my life. I was paranoid, exhausted, jumping at every sound, unable to focus on anything for longer than a few minutes. My friends and family grew worried, but I couldn't let anyone in. Leah would know, and I didn't want her targeting them too. This had to end. I was out of options. The following night, I devised a plan. I set up a trap, hoping to finally catch her on camera inside my house. I positioned every camera perfectly, double-checked every angle, and left the house, pretending I'd gone to a friend's place. In reality, I parked my car down the street and waited, watching my house from a safe distance. My fingers hovered over my phone, ready to call the police the second I saw her slip inside. Hours passed. Midnight came and went, but she didn't show up. The tension gnawed at me, every minute stretching into an eternity. Just when I was starting to think she'd somehow sensed my plan, my phone buzzed. It was an unknown number, and the text read, Asterisk, don't worry. I'm waiting for you inside. Asterisk. My blood ran cold. She'd outmaneuvered me again. She was in my house. I didn't wait. I dialed the police, explaining in a shaking voice that my ex had broken into my home, that she'd been stalking me and was now inside, waiting. They told me to stay where I was, that a unit was on the way. I sat there, clutching my phone, listening to every breath, every heartbeat, waiting for the blue and red lights to arrive. When the police finally entered my house, they found the place exactly as I had left it, almost. Nothing was broken, no doors were forced, but my bedroom was another story. Strewn across the bed were dozens of pictures of me, all taken without my knowledge, from various places and times over the past few weeks. Some were from a distance, others right outside my window, but the worst was a photo of me sleeping, taken so close that the camera must have been just inches from my face. I felt sick, but the worst part came when one of the officers called me over to show me a note that had been taped to my bathroom mirror. In Leah's handwriting, it read, "Asterisk, you can call the police, but I'll always be a step ahead. Asterisk. They took my statement, documenting everything, but I could see the doubt in their eyes. I couldn't blame them. Leah was meticulous. No signs of forced entry, no concrete proof linking her directly to the messages, no witnesses who had seen her come or go. She'd turned my own home into her playground, leaving just enough to make me look paranoid, but never enough to implicate herself. A restraining order was issued, though I knew it would only be a piece of paper in Leah's mind. I installed more locks, barricaded windows, anything I could think of to keep her out. Weeks passed with no sign of her, but my anxiety lingered, a constant, gnawing reminder of her ability to worm her way into my life, my thoughts, my very sense of safety. Then, just as I was beginning to feel the faintest glimmer of normalcy, I came home one evening to a quiet house and a single message waiting for me on my phone. Asterisk, I miss us. Asterisk. My heart sank, the dread rising like a dark wave. I deleted the message, telling myself it was over, that Leah was gone, that I could finally move on. But every night, I found myself listening for the faintest sound, checking my locks twice, and glancing over my shoulder on every quiet street. Leah had won in a way. She'd left my life, yes, but her memory, her haunting, unnerving presence, had imprinted itself so deeply into my mind that it was like she was still there, just out of sight, always watching. And in the quiet moments, when the world was still and I was alone, I could almost feel her smile, knowing that she'd be a part of my life forever.